Welcome to the Creative Plan Podcast Network. Join us as we share our favorite RPGs, one-shot games, tabletop games, reviews of items, and convention panels, and other exciting things that we run into from time to time. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Hi, this is Kelly, aka Trixie from Ragnarok and Roll, assigned to Ragnarok Story, and Tilda Wimblewick from D&D Journey of the 5th Edition. First off, I would just like to say thank you to everyone for listening to our varied adventures, as well as for rating us on iTunes and RPGpodcast.com. If you haven't rated us yet, we would greatly appreciate it if you could. And if you're looking for more ways to support our efforts, we are now on Patreon, a great site where you can help us continue making more podcasts, as well as some special surprises for our patrons. If you can, please look us up at www.patreon.com/cppn. Every little bit helps. And again, thank you for listening.
Hey guys, Jim and Kelly from Creative Plan Podcast Network. It is #RPGaDay2019, August the 27th.
The 27th. Coming to the end of the month.
So, the word for the day is suspense. Dun dun dun. So Kelly, I'm going to ask you a question about suspense.
Okay, I hopefully have an answer.
As a player, from a GM, what is a great way for me to build suspense in a game?
Okay, I have sort of two answers, okay? in the playing, it's when you give us clues. And, it's like when we feel, we're getting closer, type of thing. That helps build suspense.
The show don't tell.
Yeah. But in sort of like the actual over the outside of game.
The camera descriptions.
Yeah. No. When you like roll dice randomly. Or it's like, and everybody's like,
and I can just
he's rolling something.
Butts puckers to chairs.
Exactly. So there's this suspense hanging in the air because you're just fucking with people.
No, a lot of times I'm
sometimes,
like deciding things.
Not all the time though.
And then I'll let it like,
or you'll come out with a statement. It's like, oh, so you're doing what? And then like again, the butts pucker and like, oh shit, something's about to come down. So you build a suspense that way as well.
Using a back and forth conversation.
Yeah, so it's like, ooh.
So it makes you start, doubting yourself.
Yes, so I get a kick. Sometimes I get a kick out of when you do that because the way some of the players it's like, oh shit, me, I'm like, oh god, what did I do? See the suspense of, oh god, what's gonna happen next? Oh my god, what did we just step into? Oh my god, it's the Tomb of Annihilation and we're all dead. So you do it two ways. So you build it in game, by the showing and the not telling, and then you'll describe things and then okay, you know what that is, But then you do
I do a meta.
The meta one.
Where it's just fucking at the table.
Exactly.
I'll roll and, okay.
Yeah, and then everyone's like, what?
No.
What?
What's your passive perception?
Exactly. And you could just be asking.
And a lot of times, I'll be honest, that is actually me rolling something stealth or whatnot and seeing what happens. Because it could be you're under observation. It could be that I rolled just at one person's passive perception, and that's when you have that spooky pygmies in the bush type idea, where something's watching you. And I mean, like even in our Dinosaurs and Dungeons, or Dungeons and Dinosaurs, we're still debating which way we're taking that. The group realized with passive perception, I rolled for this tabaxi that was following the group that they rescued earlier, but she disappeared into the jungle.
I think it should be Dungeons and Dinosaurs.
Well, there is a Dungeons and Dinosaurs game, so I probably don't want to use that title.
Okay, well then.
And the one team member realized she was following them. a discreet, safe distance away. And then he of course used deception to play off. He didn't even recognize her, and so he used the suspense of not telling the party either. And then basically in the middle of the night when she was doing her thing, he used his spell to throw fish from the river into her camp area, so that way she had something to eat discreetly, telling her, I know you're there. But not telling the rest of the party, making it very suspenseful.
Yeah, another meta suspenseful thing is like when a player writes a note and hands it to the DM.
That's a good way of causing suspense. That's one of my favorite ones. But you got to be careful, though. You want to do it equally amongst people. And it can slow down gaming, too.
Well, I mean, and I don't do it that often, but with my, with the daggers, where I do have ulterior
where you're
motives.
A changeling who's doing all kinds of shady things behind her party's back.
Exactly. Not that I...
You're not the only one, though.
Yeah. But I have my own agenda.
And you've secretly discovered some things, and you're secretly doing some things. Yeah. And it's going to be funny when that comes to a head.
Yeah.
Because there's this whole shell game going on. It's going on before the group even knows it's happening.
So, yeah.
All by one coincidental lucky roll.
Yes.
That's the beauty of, GMs letting the suspense just happen. And why not throw this into the game 3 levels earlier? Why not? Let's start the game.
Yes.
Which makes for a suspenseful
The game
lead.
is afoot.
The game within the game. The great game. Suspense. So one.
And there's another form of suspense in RPGs, I think.
What's that?
And it's the dice roll.
Success or failure.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's when you are you're shaking the dice and you're getting ready. There's that moment of suspense. What are you going to roll?
Infinite potential.
Exactly. You don't know how it's going to, so every time you pick up that die to roll, there's a touch of suspense as to what's going to happen. Are you going to critically fail? Are you going to rock it with a triumph? Or, every time you pick up that dice, it's this little minor thrill of suspense.
So I've got one for suspense there that I'm going to do in honor of Joseph since he's not here today. Because it involves the Star Wars or Genesis system. When players roll threat, and you just mark a little tally mark on your sheet, and that is communicating to the group that I'm not using the threat yet.
No, you're saving it up.
I'm milking that threat to a magic number that I've already written down and a thing happening. And when it hits that magic number, all hell's going to break loose. But you never know between one dice roll and another how many threats might pop up. So...
I've got another one too.
Oh, what you got?
The willing suspension of disbelief. Which is something that, because I was a media arts major.
Yeah.
And they do it in film. It's the audience has what they call the willing suspension of disbelief, so that you can have these fantastic
out of the norm,
or moments and stuff. And when a movie cannot achieve that willing suspension of disbelief, it's a crap.
Falls flat.
It's you just, because you're not engaging the audience. So, and the same with gaming. You have to have that willing suspension of disbelief, otherwise you'll get bogged down into things. It's when we're doing the Genesis game or something, where there's a bit of science that can be thrown in. But if you get bogged down on, physically that can't happen.
The minutiae.
The physics do not, okay, then you're stepping out and it's hard to, you have to have a certain amount of willing suspension of disbelief to, yes, there is an airship that is flying through the air based on aether technology, it's the same with books and that type of thing. If you're not willing to suspend rational or scientific, laws to a certain degree, you can't
have the core.
You lose some of the magic of the situation or the setting.
If you can't believe a farm boy can levitate some rocks and have a little green man riding on his back, how can you have a Jedi come back with a lightsaber and crush somebody?
Exactly. So
you have to have your little steps that you're allowed to go.
Exactly. So for suspense, that's another form of it for, I think.
Which that's true. It's along the gaming rules. Like GMs, you have to give that suspension, of physics to allow your players to do cool shit. Because the rule of cool,
you don't have to completely throw out all the laws of nature or physics, because that might be too far afield. Then you're playing Numenera. Or no, not, what is it, Magic?
Oh, you're referring to
Mage, that's it.
The White Wolf.
I'm like, so basically there are no rules.
The only rule is there are no rules.
Exactly, and no, sorry.
It's too much loosey-goosey for you.
There's not enough framework, in my opinion. That's the one.
Yes.
Mage.
Mage the Ascension.
Yeah, so it's, there has to be...
Well, it's also your lawful good nature.
Yeah.
You want structure.
I do.
You want guidelines, really.
It's like more of a guideline, really.
So that and players give your GM suspense. Make them wait to find out what your big surprise is. Try to surprise your GM. And put him in suspense. What are the players going to do? Think about TV shows. I will throw out Batman, the classic show. What is Batman going to do trapped in this death trap? Sometimes as a GM, it is good to say, it's time to wrap up for the night when they're in the middle of a cliffhanger. Because that is the bread and butter of suspense, is the cliffhanger ending. Sorry, I'm just a huge fan of the cliffhanger. You know that. Because it'll bring them back to the table every time. Mm-hmm. Just like every season finale that used every trick to come back the next season. It's true. It works. Who shot JR? Nobody cares nowadays, but back then apparently they lost their minds. So that is August the 27th. You are no longer held in suspense. This is the end of the podcast. And that's a good place to wrap it up there.
Down in the depths of the mountain, we dwarves spend our time forging powerful weapons, mining precious gems and metals, and feasting like kings. But after a day of digging for the next Arkenstone, this dwarf likes to come home to a package full of loot. Dungeon Crate is a monthly subscription box service forged specifically for RPG and tabletop gamers. Miniatures, dice, tokens, coins, maps, modules, terrain pieces, handcrafted items, RPG jewelry, and more are yours for only a few gold per month. You even get a digital crate along with a physical one as an added bonus. So are you brave enough to reward yourself with a Dungeon Crate? By Morden's beard, I hope so. DungeonCrate.com. Let the adventure begin.
Thank you for listening to the Creative Play and Podcast Network. And feel free to enjoy our other shows, such as D&D Journey of the 5th Edition and Scion Ragnarok and Roll, a Scion hero to Ragnarok story. Thank you for listening.